The question of the hearing is, how much are contractors costing the government? Contractors now perform many of the duties which most Americans would assume are done by government employees, from managing and overseeing contracts and programs to developing policies and actually writing regulations. Contractors sit side by side with federal employees and perform many of the same tasks. Spending on service contractors has outpaced spending on federal employees. The cost of service contracts has increased by 44% over the last 10 years, from $181 billion to $324 billion, while in the same time, spending on federal employees has only increased by 34%, $170 billion to $229 billion. As with any expense of taxpayer dollars, we have to ask whether the government is getting the most effective use out of these dollars. For the government to make smart contracting decisions, it needs more than assumptions. If the government is going to have the best and most efficient mix of federal employees and contractors to perform its work, it needs to be able to assess the true costs of both outsourcing and insourcing. This analysis should include overhead costs, how contractor compensation should be reimbursed, and when some government functions are inherently governmental or critically impact an agency's core mission. We have spent a lot of time in Congress talking about freezing the number of federal employees and freezing the pay of federal employees. There has not been enough talk about freezing the size of the contracting force and freezing the pay of contractors. And frankly, if people understand that we're spending more money on service-related contractors in many agencies than we're spending on federal employees. That's why I've been frustrated with these efforts, because it's like saying you've got a problem, but we're gonna shut one eye and only look at part of it. This is an attempt today, this hearing, to make sure that the efforts to freeze the size of federal employees does not go on without us taking a hard look at this contracting workforce, its efficiencies, and whether or not the taxpayers are getting a bang for their buck. Anybody who believes we can't find savings in the Department of Defense around contracting does not know the issue. I find it astonishing that agencies don't consider whether it's cheaper to use contractors or federal employees before deciding whether to award a contract. I've never met anybody who's gone into a government job looking for big money. I think most people who take government jobs know that while it does offer stability, I don't think that most people who seek public sector employment are looking for a big payday. It just has not been my experience. And so I've been disappointed at some of my colleagues who think that they can get to a leaner, meaner federal government just by beating up on the level of pay of federal employees. And that brings me to contractor compensation. I've never seen anyone give a speech on the floor that we need to do something about the high rate of salaries with contractors. And as you may well know, that there have been attempts to put in legislation to put a cap on contractor salaries. I think most Americans would be shocked to know that we have one now, and it's $693,000 a year. So right now, the federal government can pay contractors up to almost $700 grand a year. My colleagues, Senator Boxer and Grassley, have proposed changing this cap to $400,000 a year for all contractor and subcontractor employees. Others have even proposed lowering the cap even further. And for civilian contracts, the cap only applies to senior executives. I believe the cap should be extended to all contractor and subcontractor employees. We're not telling private companies what they can pay their people. They can pay them whatever they want. If they want to pay them more, they're welcome to do so. This isn't about the government telling private companies how much people should make. It's about telling private companies how much the government will pay.